It doesn't roar. It doesn't honk. It doesn't stop. In 1977, a low-budget thriller crept into theaters with a premise so absurd it was almost laughable: a black Lincoln Continental prowling the deserts of Utah, mowing down innocent victims without a driver behind the wheel. But the car wasn't just another B-movie chasing after Jaws or riding on the fumes of Hollywood horror. Beneath its polished chrome and gravel-churning menace, it carried a presence that felt unnatural. Unlike Stephen King's Christine, which would arrive 6 years later, the car had no backstory, no cursed origin, no angry ghost with a vendetta. Just a machine, heartless, relentless, and terrifyingly empty. Yet the fear it inspired wasn't just supernatural, it was symbolic. Some film scholars have speculated that the car was less about demonic possession and more about America's spiraling obsession with control, machinery, and the cold power of industrialism in a post-Vietnam, oil-shocked decade. Designed by George Barris, the same man who gave Batman his iconic Batmobile, the vehicle wasn't just a prop, it became a character in its own right. Sleek, faceless, and disturbingly alive. On set, the car reportedly veered off during filming, crashing unexpectedly, a mishap that only fueled rumors that the vehicle wasn't entirely under human command. Critics hated it. Audiences didn't know what to make of it. But decades later, the car has been re-examined as a cult oddity, a precursor to an entire subgenre of killer car movies. Some say it was a disaster. Others, a warning. These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about the car. 1977. A film that refused to hit the brakes. 1. The car was designed to look evil. Literally, George Barris didn't just build the car, he sculpted menace on 4 wheels. Known for designing the original Batmobile, Barris was tasked with turning a 1971 Lincoln Continental Mark III into something that looked possessed, but not in a supernatural sense, in a psychological one. He lowered the roof, removed all door handles, blacked out the windows, and gave the front end a sneer-like grille. The windshield was tinted so dark that it reflected the surroundings like a mirror, hiding the driver, or rather, the absence of one. The goal wasn't to make it look fast, but to make it feel wrong. From every angle, the car appeared too low, too wide, too smooth, almost like a coffin in motion. According to Barris, the car was designed to intimidate, and it worked. Some extras refused to stand near it on set. But what really cements this car's eerie legacy is one overlooked fact. Its design was partially based on a funeral hearse. Yes, a vehicle made to carry the dead. That subtle reference adds a chilling layer, as if the car wasn't just a killer, but a collector. So the next time someone says it's just a car, you might want to ask, who or what was it built for? 2. The desert town wasn't fake, but its curse might have been. The dusty town of Santa Ynez, where much of the car was filmed, wasn't a studio lot, it was the real deal. The crew shot on location in various small towns in Utah, including the area surrounding Monument Valley and Kanab. Locals were used as extras, and many remembered the production not for the Hollywood glitz, but for the strange unease that followed. During the shoot, a string of bizarre occurrences rattled the crew. Equipment failed without reason. A camera dolly rolled on its own. Even the weather turned oddly aggressive. Sudden gusts of wind would blow only when the car scenes were being filmed. A production assistant reportedly quit after a close call with the car, though the engine wasn't even running. Locals began whispering about a Navajo curse, claiming the film had disturbed sacred ground. While there's no formal evidence to back the claim, the eeriness lingered long after the production wrapped. The most unsettling part? Several crew members claimed to have recurring nightmares about being followed by a car long after returning to LA. Was it the isolation of the desert? Or had the car awakened something that preferred to stay buried? 3. No one drove the car, and that's what made it terrifying. What terrified audiences most about the car wasn't what it did, it was what it didn't have: a driver. Unlike other killer vehicle movies where some possessed soul or evil entity is revealed to be behind the wheel, the car offers no explanation. It simply appears, it kills, it vanishes. And to reinforce that eerie concept, the filmmakers went to extreme lengths during production. In most driving shots, the car was operated by a stuntman crouched below the dashboard, steering through hidden mechanisms. Other times, remote control systems were used, crude by today's standards, but effective enough to make the car seem sentient. No wires, no puppetry, just a machine moving with purpose. Even in scenes where the car seems to stalk its victims, revving quietly behind a fence, waiting outside a house, the camera lingers just long enough to make you doubt your own eyes. Is there someone inside or not? Director Elliot Silverstein intentionally avoided any backstory for the car. No origin, no haunting, no motive, just the terrifying void of silence. In a world where every monster has an explanation, the car dared to remain empty. 4. One scene was so disturbing, it was nearly cut. There's one scene in the car that pushed the limits of 1,970 seconds horror, not with gore, but with its psychological cruelty. It involves a group of schoolchildren crossing a remote bridge as the black car appears in the distance. The vehicle pauses, waits, then charges toward them. Screaming ensues, and dozens of terrified kids run for their lives as the car barrels forward. But here's the twist: no one dies in the scene. That's what made it more horrifying. The car lets them go, almost as if toying with them, and that made the sequence more chilling than a typical kill. According to behind-the-scenes reports, the studio considered cutting the scene, worried it would provoke backlash over showing children in mortal danger. One executive called it sadistic, but director Elliot Silverstein fought to keep it. To him, the point wasn't violence, it was dread. And it worked. The sequence remains one of the most tension-filled moments in the film. Years later, Quentin Tarantino cited it as a masterclass in suspense without blood. So ask yourself, what's more terrifying, a monster that kills, or one that chooses not to? 5. The car's horn was custom-built to sound demonic. You've heard it, that guttural, distorted blast. It's not just a regular car horn, it's a sonic signature of doom, and it wasn't created by accident. Sound designer Leonard T. Brooks revealed in a rare interview that the horn of the car was engineered using a mix of brass instrument recordings, slowed animal growls, and a detuned foghorn. The result? A howl that didn't sound mechanical, it sounded alive. In fact, the sound team reportedly lowered the pitch to a frequency just above infrasound, the range known to cause anxiety, nausea, and even panic in some people. That's not just storytelling, that's weaponized audio. Some viewers at the time complained of feeling uneasy or ill during scenes where the horn blared. And yes, that was intentional. To this day, the car's horn is considered one of the most unique and unsettling sound effects in horror cinema. It wasn't just heard, it was felt in the spine, in the chest, in the instinct to run. Because when you hear that horn, it's already too late. 6. James Brolin almost quit. After a near-fatal stunt, long before he was known as Thanos' real-life dad, James Brolin was the car's reluctant hero. But filming wasn't just emotionally draining, it was physically dangerous. In one particularly chaotic sequence, Brolin had to dodge the speeding car while sprinting through a cloud of smoke. Timing had to be precise. The car would miss him by inches, except it didn't. According to crew members, the car clipped a piece of debris on the ground, skidded slightly off mark, and passed within a foot of Brolin's shoulder. Cameras kept rolling, but the actor was visibly shaken. Brolin reportedly stormed off set and refused to shoot any more scenes that involved close proximity to the car without additional safety measures. "I thought I was going to die on camera," he later recalled in an interview. The production halted for half a day while stunt protocols were reviewed. From then on, Brolin's stunts were doubled or heavily choreographed. Ironically, the near miss gave the scene a rawness that made it into the final cut. But here's the dark joke the crew whispered afterward: the car missed. But maybe it didn't want to hit him. Yet. Number 7. A satanic connection was quietly buried by the studio. There's a reason. The car feels like something out of hell, and not just metaphorically. Early drafts of the script contained explicit references to satanic forces, suggesting the car was literally a demonic entity sent from the underworld. The film originally opened with a quote from Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan, and had scenes that hinted at rituals and occult symbolism tied to the vehicle's origin. But Universal got cold feet, fearing backlash in an already conservative climate, especially after controversies surrounding The Exorcist and The Omen. The studio ordered all religious references to be removed or downplayed. The Anton LaVey quote was replaced with a generic warning. Occult scenes were rewritten. The result? A film that feels haunted, but never explains why. Some argue that this ambiguity made the film even scarier. Others see it as a missed opportunity to explore the roots of evil. Curiously, promotional materials in some international markets still included satanic themes, hinting that the original idea never fully died, it was just paved over. So was the car a mindless killer? Or a messenger from something darker? 8. The soundtrack composer thought the film was a joke until it haunted him. Composer Leonard Rosenman initially laughed when offered the score for the car. "It's about a killer car? Really?" he reportedly said. But after reading the script and seeing how eerily serious it took itself, Rosenman agreed, on one condition: He'd write the music like it was a biblical horror epic, not a campy thriller. What he delivered was a haunting orchestral suite with choral wails and thunderous brass, reminiscent of Carmina Burana. It clashed beautifully with the silence of the desert and the cold metal of the car. But what disturbed Rosenman most wasn't the story, it was what happened after. He began experiencing engine problems with his own car. Once, while driving home late at night, his brakes failed without warning. For a second, he said in a later interview, I wondered if I'd offended something. Rosenman laughed it off, but when asked to score a sequel, he refused. Because sometimes, it's better not to play music for what you don't understand. 9. The film was banned in multiple countries for the wrong reasons. You might think a movie about a haunted car wouldn't ruffle too many feathers, but the car was banned or heavily censored in several countries upon release, not because of violence or satanic undertones, but because it was seen as culturally subversive. In parts of the Middle East and Latin America, officials objected to the film's anti-authoritarian tone, citing scenes where the car outwits or kills police officers without consequence. One censor described it as a film that glorifies chaos and strips away the idea of human control. Ironically, these interpretations were never the filmmaker's intent, but they gave the car a political edge it didn't ask for and maybe didn't even deserve. Still, in some circles, the car became a symbol of resistance, an unstoppable force that destroys institutions, mocks order, and can't be reasoned with, which raises the question, was it just horror or quiet rebellion on wheels? 10. A real funeral almost stopped the filming and made the scene too real. In one eerie coincidence, the crew was preparing to shoot a scene involving a funeral procession, just as a real funeral arrived unexpectedly at the nearby cemetery. The production had received permits to film, but didn't anticipate an actual burial occurring on the same day. Out of respect, the shoot was paused, but the timing shook the cast and crew. When filming resumed, the funeral scene where the car barrels through a cemetery and terrorizes mourners took on a surreal edge. Some extras even refused to return, saying it felt disrespectful or inviting bad luck. Director Elliot Silverstein reportedly told his assistant, "We just walked into someone's grief, and now we're pretending to create more." To this day, the scene feels too authentic, as if the film had unknowingly blurred the line between fiction and ritual. Was it coincidence, or did the car know exactly where to be? 11. The studio wanted more screams, the director gave them silence. In an era of blood-soaked horror and relentless jump scares, the car felt too quiet. At least, that's what Universal executives thought during the early production phase. Watching the first reels, they were baffled by the minimal dialogue, slow tracking shots, and long stretches where nothing seemed to happen except for the feeling that something terrible was coming. They demanded changes, more explosions, faster pacing, louder characters, but director Elliot Silverstein resisted. His vision wasn't a scream fest. He wanted the tension to creep in like exhaust fumes, slow and invisible. He used the silence of the desert to isolate viewers so that when the car appeared, its presence felt like a violation of nature itself. The standoff nearly cost him the job, but when internal test screenings revealed that viewers were gripping their seats and holding their breath, the studio backed off. Sometimes, the most frightening sound in horror is the one that never arrives. 12. The final explosion was so real, it almost went wrong. The fiery death of the car wasn't a special effect rendered in post, it was a one-time-only detonation filmed with very real explosives and an actual full-sized Lincoln Continental. The production team had one chance. No digital tricks, no backup car. They chose a remote cliff in the Utah desert, positioned cameras from multiple angles, and rolled. As the unmanned vehicle thundered over the edge, there was a moment of near panic. The wind shifted, and part of the pyrotechnic rig ignited early. The result? A fireball twice as large as expected, scattering debris dangerously close to crew members. Equipment melted. A nearby camera operator dove into a ditch to avoid shrapnel, but they got the shot. And if you pause at the right frame, some fans claim you can still make out a shape in the flames, something that looks less like wreckage and more like it's still watching. 13. A string of unsolved deaths might have inspired the script. Years before the car was written, a bizarre set of real-life incidents spread across the American Southwest. Remote highways, dead drivers, mangled wrecks, and no sign of another vehicle involved. What tied them together was a whisper reports of a black car seen near the scene, always described the same way. No plates, tinted windows, engine too quiet. Police never found it. Witnesses contradicted each other, The cases faded into obscurity. But screenwriter Michael Butler, while researching road stories for a different project, stumbled upon local newspaper clippings that chronicled these eerie accidents. Something about the pattern felt too precise to be coincidence. He never confirmed it publicly, but colleagues claimed those articles haunted him and eventually shaped the narrative of The Car. A film about a killer vehicle might sound absurd, unless, of course, it already happened. 14. The car refused to cross sacred ground, but only once. In a pivotal moment during The Car, the vehicle barrels toward a group of pedestrians only to slam to a halt just before the entrance of a churchyard. No explanation is given, no voiceover, no divine light. Just the unmistakable sense that something invisible had drawn a line the car would not cross. What most viewers don't realize is that this was the only moment in the entire film where the car hesitated. In every other scene, it is merciless and unstoppable. But when it came to consecrated ground, it backed away. This wasn't a creative accident. Behind the scenes, the script originally included a discussion among characters about the car's behavior theories ranging from demonic boundaries to metaphysical codes. But the director cut those lines, deciding the silence made the moment more powerful. Some audiences found the scene chilling, others dismissed it as symbolic fluff, but a few, particularly in religious circles, interpreted it as proof that the car wasn't just evil, it was evil with limits, and limits imply rules. So the real question isn't why it stopped, it's what it was afraid of. 15. A sequel was pitched, but the car had new powers. Following the surprise cult, following that the car earned through VHS and midnight screenings, the studio flirted with the idea of bringing it back. A sequel treatment circulated internally in the early 80 seconds with the working title, Return of the Car. But it wasn't just more of the same. The new concept placed the car in a densely populated urban setting, a cold, brutalist version of Los Angeles, where its presence would no longer be confined to empty roads and desert silence. And this time, the car wouldn't just drive. It would manipulate electronics, take control of traffic lights, cause blackouts, even hijack other vehicles. Some drafts went further, hinting the car could possess humans and transfer its will through machines. It wasn't just a killer anymore, it was becoming something closer to a virus. Ultimately, the project stalled. Some say the budget was too high. Others claim the script felt too strange, even for horror. But decades later, traces of that idea would echo in films like Maximum Overdrive and Death Machine. Maybe the car didn't need a sequel. Maybe it was already evolving on its own. 16. No one ever opens the hood. And that was the point. Across its entire 98-minute runtime, the car never reveals what powers the vehicle. The hood stays sealed. No mechanic pops it open. No cop tries to investigate the engine. Not once. That was a deliberate decision by the filmmaker. Early drafts included scenes where characters inspected the vehicle, trying to explain how it moved or why it couldn't be stopped, but those were scrapped during rewrites. Director Elliot Silverstein wanted mystery over mechanics. The less the audience knew, the more terrifying the car became. Even the prop team was told to leave the undercarriage empty-looking and unremarkable, just enough real-world detail to be plausible, but never enough to answer questions. This choice sparked endless fan theories. Some believe the car runs on demonic energy, others suggest alien tech. A few even claim it's a metaphor for self-propelling violence, something that moves forward only because no one stops it. Sometimes, horror isn't in the explanation. It's in the fact that no one dares to ask. 17. One crew member claimed the car, chose who it liked. Among the stunt team on the car, there was a quiet superstition that no one wanted to talk about publicly, the idea that the car seemed to favor some people and target others. One particular crew member, a vehicle rigger with years of experience, refused to touch the car unless absolutely necessary. He never joked about it. He never stood near it when idle. And on the 5th day of production, he left the set abruptly. No explanation, just a note that read, "It knows when you don't respect it." Some thought it was nerves. Others said he'd seen too many accidents on film sets. But a few believed something darker had unsettled him, especially after a minor crash occurred the following day, during a test drive, in the exact spot where he'd been working. He never worked on another horror film again. Was it paranoia or intuition? Either way, on that set, fear wasn't limited to the actors. 18. The original poster misled everyone, and maybe that was the plan. When the car was released, its official poster featured a shadowy image of a sleek black vehicle with glowing lights and a foggy backdrop. The tagline, "What evil drives?" Most assumed it was a vampire movie or something supernatural, or maybe just campy fun. and that confusion might have doomed the film's box office. But what if it wasn't a marketing blunder? Some insiders later suggested that Universal intentionally misled audiences, hoping to attract both horror fans and action lovers, knowing full well the film didn't fit either mold cleanly. It was psychological, slow burn, strange, the kind of movie you remember not because of what it shows, but what it hides. In time, that very ambiguity turned the car into a cult object misunderstood on release, but treasured in retrospect, a failed poster or the perfect disguise. 19. The car was almost given a soul, then silenced again. In early story meetings, one bold idea emerged. What if the car could speak? Writers explored giving the vehicle a limited voice, not full sentences, but growls, guttural sounds, even words formed through distortion and radio interference. Audio engineers created tests, fragments of whispers, static that seemed to shape syllables, low frequencies that made viewers shudder. But when those sounds were paired with footage, the effect was wrong, not creepy, not mysterious, just excessive. The car suddenly felt less like a force of nature and more like a gimmick. The team pulled the plug. In the final cut, the car remains eerily silent. It never growls, never mocks, never pleads. It simply exists. And that silence? It's what made it unforgettable. Because monsters don't need voice. They just need to keep moving. 20. The final frame hides a message if you're looking. After the car is engulfed in flames and sent tumbling off the cliff, the car ends on a seemingly simple shot, tire marks scorched into a city street far from the desert. Most people miss it. The transition is brief, subtle. No explanation is given. But for those paying attention, it suggests something unnerving. The car didn't die. It relocated. Director Silverstein never clarified the meaning. When asked, he only said, "Not all evil is destroyed. Some of it just changes lanes." Fans have debated that final image for decades. Was it a sequel setup, a warning, or simply a visual echo to keep the tension alive? Whatever the truth, it worked. Because even when the screen fades to black, the car doesn't feel finished. It feels parked nearby. Bonus FACT, a grave marker no one claimed. Years after the car wrapped production, a prop collector acquired what he believed to be a leftover piece from the film's cemetery scene, a weathered foam tombstone used during the shoot. But when he tried to verify its authenticity, something strange happened. Production records had no mention of it. Set designers denied building it. The name engraved on the prop, Edward J. Rathmore, 1912, 1976, did not match any character in the script or any crew member on file. Out of curiosity, the collector searched local Utah burial records and found something chilling. There was an Edward J. Rathmore, died in 1976, buried less than 10 miles from the filming location. Cause of death, listed as vehicular trauma. To this day, no one knows how that name ended up on a set piece. Some say it was coincidence. Others believe the prop was never a prop at all, but mistakenly brought from a real grave marker during location cleanup. The tombstone remains in the collector's garage. He refuses to sell it, refuses to move it. Says the one time he tried to relocate it, the brake lines on his car failed the next day. He doesn't believe in curses, but he's never parked his car in the garage again. We've driven through every shadowy turn and unanswered question the car left behind. Now it's your turn to take the wheel. Which fact stuck with you the most, and do you think the car was just a machine? Or something far more ancient hiding under chrome and steel? Drop your theories below and tell us, what forgotten film should we investigate next?